Besides seeing the trains and trams again, another reason why I went to Melbourne in 2024 was to catch up with an old friend who I've known for around 18 years now, but I won't mention her name out of respect for her privacy. In any case, we went out to see the trams at Moonee Ponds Junction, trains at the North Melbourne viewing platform, yet again, and on the Williamstown branch. We also visited the Newport Railway Museum, and this will get its own dedicated video. But first, I went to Moonee Ponds Railway Station to film the Comenge EMUs yet again. For whatever reason, the mould was broken by a couple of Siemens Nexus units, and just when I thought the Craigieburn line was 100% Comenge after the recent timetable change. Then it was on to the tram stop, which is located around 500 metres east of the railway station. This is a very busy intersection, complete with a bus interchange and service from tram routes 59 and 82. As such, you'll only see the B2 and Z3 classes at this stop, neither of which are low-floor designs. Back at North Melbourne, the rail scene was more or less the same as it was on Friday, albeit without the Overland and XPT. Luckily, we saw N458 coming over the flyover with a service from Swan Hill to Southern Cross. Then it was time to catch a train down to North Williamstown, but first we saw a pair of Extrapolis 100s arriving and departing on a Williamstown to Cheltenham service. Our train to North Williamstown was an EDI Comenge set, led by coach number 522M. On our way to the Williamstown branch, we passed some of the freight sidings near South Dynon Yard. In this shot, you can see what I think are some ex-V-Line inset coaches, 2 VL diesel locomotives, and ex-New South Wales Government Railways 442 class number 44202. The 442 is now painted in the, is it pronounced cube? Silver and yellow livery. The view out the window from Newport to North Williamstown is mostly dominated by the massive yards at Newport workshops. As for North Williamstown station itself, this was rebuilt in a trench in 2021 as part of the level crossing removal project. Frankly, I'm surprised that even a station on this tiny branch was given the LXRP treatment.
Now arriving at North Williamstown.
We spent around an hour and 10 minutes at the Newport Railway Museum, but I didn't photograph every single exhibit, and there were other places that I wanted to visit on this day. One such place was the terminus of the Williamstown branch itself, and we got there aboard a Siemens Nexus unit. Williamstown Station opened in 1859, and it's now the terminus of a short 4.5 kilometre long branch off the Werribee line, with Newport being the junction station. Revisiting this branch was something that I had always intended to do, since I remember coming down here in October 2013. But, unlike that original trip, there wasn't enough time on this visit to go over to the harbour to see the HMAS Castlemaine. The current station wasn't always the end of the line, as it used to continue for a further 500 metres to Williamstown Pier. The line was cut back to its current terminus in 1987. As for the Siemens Nexus, I am not a fan of this design, to say the very least. The motor noise is fairly distinctive, but that's just about the only remarkable trait of these units, in my opinion. Our train back to the city turned out to be an Extrapolis 100, and these units didn't start running on the Williamstown branch until 2016. Like the Comminge and Siemens Nexus, the 3-car Extrapolis 100 units typically run coupled in pairs to make a 6-car train, and the set we rode in this time consisted of coaches 47M, 1324T and 48M. The Extraps were built over a period of 18 years from 2002 to 2020, and this particular set was built in 2010, according to this builder's plate in a passenger doorway. On the way back to Southern Cross, we also saw some old Hitachi EMU coaches still in storage at Newport workshops. We also got a taste of the Extrapolis 100's infamous habit of lurching and swaying about, and this begs the question as to why these units have coil instead of airbag suspension. Despite the suspension issue, I still like the Extraps for their distinctive motor noise, which sounds like the London Underground 1996 stock. As we walked over to the tram stop on Collins Street, I couldn't help noticing this pair of V-Line Sprinter railcars, especially since 7005 retains an old livery that dates back to 2007, when these units were refurbished for the first time. When we got to the tram stop, this friend of mine that had accompanied me down the Williamstown branch went back home, and I caught the 109 tram down to Port Melbourne. Going to Port Melbourne was a very interesting experience, not just because it reminded me of how much I dislike the C1 tram, but also because of the bizarre nature of this line, or at least the last few kilometres. This section used to be a heavy rail line, and served by the refurbished Harris trains in the 1980s, but the line closed in 1987 for conversion into a tram line. Fortunately, the old station building at Port Melbourne has been preserved. After seeing those trams coming and going from Route 109's southern terminus, I thought it was time to return to Moonee Ponds. But on the way back, I hopped off at the former Montague station because, on the way down, I noticed 3 of the rare C2 trams parked in the sidings at the far end of South Bank Depot and wanted to take a closer look. Well, as close of a look as you can take with these fences in the way, but it is what it is. I had better luck with the C2 class than I was expecting. I remember seeing at least 3 of them multiple times throughout this trip, and one of them, number 5103, even featured in this impressive lineup that I saw right at the end of the sidings, with E2 class number 6052 and a W8 class number 959 for company. As for how I got this shot, I simply held the camera up to a small gap in the fence. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the infamous Montague Street Bridge too. This thing has a very low clearance of only 3 metres, and I hear that it's often struck by tall vehicles in spite of all the warning signs further back from the bridge, in both directions. Once back at Southern Cross, I transferred to a Craigieburn train for the journey back to Moonee Ponds, and managed to film a pair of sprinters passing by on a Seymour service after I got there, complete with their distinctive screaming horns to boot. The sprinters were my last catch of the day.